Hey, Jonathan here. Let's make a 3D model based on a hand sketch as we learn the foundations of Rhino 7. Let's do this. Now, double-clicking on the file provided, let's dive right in. First up is we're going to be importing a sketch into Rhino. Now, there are several ways of doing this. I want to show you all of them, which are 3, so that you can decide for yourself which one do you want when. Let's start with the most brute one, which is import and scale a bitmap. This one is going to essentially load an image into the background of your building neighborhood. Let's start by going up here to the menu, select View, go down to Background Bitmap, then Place. Now you should navigate to the folder where you have downloaded the image provided. We have provided you an image. Let's take that JPEG and let's open it. Now it's always look at the top left corner. It's going to ask me to set the first corner for this background bitmap. Let's just click here, for example. And then the second corner is going to be here, just as a reference. Now we have a preliminary position for this. Now notice how the command hasn't stopped yet. Now it tells you to choose an option. Now we can either align it, extract it, we want to grayscale it or not. So for example, let's click on grayscale. Now we see the colors again. You could also move it. For example, let's click on move, click a reference point and move it upwards, for example. We could also refresh it if we have changed the original file. We can scale it, which is advisable, and actually the next step. So let's click on scale. And now we're going to set a reference point and then tell Rhino which measure this reference distance should have. Let's click, for example, on this red dot right here once. Let's click on a second point once. Now we have set up a reference distance, meaning that Rhino knows this reference line. And now you should tell Rhino how long this line should be. In our case is 25 meters or 25, enter. So I entered 25 and notice how now it's going to be way smaller. So let's go ahead and say okay. And now that image is up here all alone, meaning that I can now move it again. Click and move it close to a 4.2 and now we should be able to use it. Now when we're finished, we can click on done. And now we have successfully imported this bitmap for the first time. Now we can just draw on top of it whatever we want, for example, a polyline, and it won't be affected by it. Or we can trace it, and that would be the point. So that is one. In case I want to change this, I can restart the command, which is background bitmap. And now that I don't want to see it anymore, I'm going to click on remove, and it's going to be gone. This means that I can only load one image and only on the background of the top, for example. So that was one. Let's keep going to importing a PDF file. Now, importing PDF files is rather fun because Rhino picks up the vector data, meaning if your PDF has a vector data and it's not a bitmap, then you will be able to straight select it, extrude it, and keep going. So let's try that. Let's start by starting the command import, which as you can see is rather powerful. Go into the folder where you downloaded the PDF of incoherent shape, which we have provided. Then click OK. Here we can preserve its units and import fills as however you want, for example, boundary curves. Now, notice how close to the 0 of the program, Rhino has actually loaded all of those lines already selected and already as curves. So now I can move them with the gumball all the way to our exercise. And we are actually ready to start using them to model. For example, extrude curve. I select all of them, enter, give it a height, enter, and now everything has been extruded. So that was the second way. There's a third way, and in this case, it only works with pixel data. This was a PDF which had vector data, which you can see we were also able to use, much like Illustrator. And now let's move on to the second exercise, a third exercise. We want to import a picture. just like on the example. Look on the left side. This is what we intend to do right now. So let's go and start the command picture. We go into the file that we have provided, incoherent shape sketch, open. Load this up in a different view. For example, let's go to the front view where the example is. We can go and use one of the lines to do it on this side. I click once and then I can click a second time. But notice also in the perspective how it's growing and it's changing where it's supposed to go. If I go back to the front, it's loading it vertically, which is what we actually want. Now that it has been imported, we need to make sure for us as architects to know exactly to match the scale of the drawing to the scale of the program. To do this, it's close to what we did before with the bitmap, but let's try it again. We're going to start the command scale, and then we're going to select the objects we want to scale. In this case, it's going to be our newly imported picture. Click. Notice how it's also selected in perspective. Now, select the object to scale and click done when you're done. Done. Now we want to set up a base point. Now the base point is going to be again the same red point that I used before. And then you have two options. Either you enter a scale value, meaning 2 for 2 times, 1.5 for 1.5 times, or 0.5 if you wanted half the size. Or, notice here, or first reference point. Meaning that if I click again on the image, more or less in a distance that it's known to me since I was the one who drew it, and click on it, now it's going to lock the image there, meaning that I can now enter a value that that line should have. In this case, since I was the one who drew this, I know that that particular length should be 30 meters. Enter for OK, and now we should have that image perfectly scaled to what we want. Then you're going to set up the right scale and you set up how long it should be, and you should have it. So that was the second way. Now let's keep going to our fourth and last and second to last exercise, which is where the fun should be. Let's trace our sketch. Now we have successfully imported our sketch. It doesn't matter which way. And now we are able to sketch on top of it. Look at the example. As you can see on the left side, we have already sketched on top of the sketch our own curves. And now we're going to do that together on the right side. Let's go and double click on top because we're now going to be working 2D. Let's zoom in your image. Now that we want to trace this, let's start by activating the command polyline. And we're going to start straight away with the first point. Now here there's many ways to draw. You can activate ortho, for example, and then it's going to pick up only orthogonal lines. For example, here 1, 2, 3 clicks. It's very useful. Now since I don't see this properly, it's a good idea to change the active one to the red line. Then if we want to do an arc, for example, we go back to polyline and then we take ortho out, and we can start here, 1 click, 2 clicks. As you can see, I can see it better. Then 3 clicks. If I want to draw an arc now, I can go and change it to arc. But this is not the kind of arc that we want. So we can change that as well by saying that I want a through point. Now I can click a through point and then the next point. Then again a through point. And then the last point. Now I have a finished curve, and slowly but surely I can completely finish up my tracing the whole drawing like this. So now everything has been traced. I want to control this by going into my standard view. Notice how here all the lines are traced, and now I want to proceed and extrude this as my last exercise command. To better view everything, I'm going to, for example, turn off the layer plans, set the default as a standard, and turn off the plans layer. That way the plans are turned off, and now I can properly see the curves that I wish to extrude. Then we're going to start the extrude command, extrude curve. I can either select one by one or select all of them at the same time, or hold down the command key and deselect a couple. When I'm done, I press enter. I make sure that solid is being selected. And then I set up the height that I wish for my solids. Now that we have extruded all of the pieces of our sketch, it is high time for us to export this as STL to be able to 3D print it. We're going to select them and start the command export. Then make sure to select the STL as the file type. Find a place where you wish to save this. Let's say, for example, into downloads, and then export. You're going to be prompted with options. And now here, it's a good moment to explain the following, which is we want to see the preview. Now notice what's happening. Rhino is showing you the actual output of the STL. Remember that STL is a mesh file which can only be defined by triangles. So Rhino is going to translate all of your shapes into triangles. Everything is great until you start doing curves, because now the curves is being defined by only one triangle, which means that you won't see a specific curve. That is why we need to change the tolerances to, for example, 0.001 and see what happens. Preview. Now we start seeing the amount of triangle that Rhino is trying to generate. Now you have to be very careful here. The more triangles, the heavier everything gets, and the chances that something gets broken along the way. So make sure to check here the proper amount of zeros that properly describes the amount of detail that you actually need to 3D print your object. After doing that properly, we're going to go and click OK and export, and we should have our STL waiting for us right where we left it. That's it for the foundations. I hope you feel ready to start working. I'll see you on the next course.